Stand Against Racism is an annual event of the YWCA Nashville and Middle Tennessee, and also of the YWCA USA. This is a community event among those working for racial and social justice and to raise awareness about the negative impact of institutional and structural racism in our communities. Our 2020 theme is Justice in a Time of Crisis. As our community seeks to recover from both tornadoes and the COVID-19 virus, we know now more than ever that what we are entering into is a new civil rights movement. We need to make sure that our communities have the full participation in the 2020 elections and census. We are especially mindful that many of our communities may be left behind. 2020 is the 55th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act of 1965. It is also the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. However, we continue to fight for the same issues that existed in 1965. We are here to come together to rally for all people in our community to have the ability to equally participate in the most important systems that we have, to ensure that all members of our community have safety, security, and basic human rights and dignity. We are facing huge crises and challenges at this point. The tornado hit Nashville and COVID-19 right behind it. That means that despite a lot of people, though some of those on this call being vigilant, we have to do more now than ever to protect human rights. I will say this, we've been working very hard. This is the first time we've done this event virtually. There may be some glitches that I hope you will excuse. Technology has not always been our friend, but hopefully it will be our friend today. I have an honor now to introduce Dr. Yvonne Kendall, a noted musicologist, and Patrick Dailey, a performing artist and educator at Tennessee State University.
In the summer of 1965, Gloria Larry House was a graduate student in the French department of the University of California campus in Berkeley. That summer, she went to Selma, Alabama for a Freedom School project of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee under the leadership of Stokely Carmichael. After her arrest for picketing a store, she witnessed a white deputy sheriff aiming a shotgun at the freed activists. Jonathan Daniel, a white graduate student from an Episcopalian seminary, stepped in front of Ruby Sales, a Black teenager. He saved her life, but died from the gunfire. House then became active, registering voters and writing statements for SNCC as their field secretary. Later, she earned a PhD in African American Studies, published 4 collections of her own poetry, and edited other volumes. Now retired, the city of Detroit honored her as a Kresge Eminent Artist in 2019. And let us keep the Motor City in our thoughts as racism still manifests in coronavirus treatment. Selma, 1965, Gloria Larry House. Patrick needs to be unmuted.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. and before be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
Amid the ghosts of civil rights marchers in Selma, in the summer so hot, the children sang in the paths of the afternoon showers.
Before I'd be your slave, I'd be buried in my grave.
From the Freedom School window, we watched them come across the lawns of the housing projects, down the rain-rutted dirt roads, through puddles waiting cool for bare feet. Touch the dripping bush, break a leaf and smell the pungency of green. They were tattered angels of hope, plaits caught at odd angles and standing indignantly, a ripped hem hanging like a train, gray knees poking through denim frames. Dancing the whole trip, they performed their historic drama against the set of their wet brick project homes.
And before I'd be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
All right. That was absolutely wonderful, Yvonne and Patrick. We couldn't ask for a better tone to be set for this virtual stand. In our communities, we are facing a lot of loss in the world, in the country, in the state, and in Nashville, Middle Tennessee. We talk a lot about social distancing, and we've talked a lot about the fear of loss. We know firsthand that for many communities, social distancing is impossible. People who are incarcerated, people who are experiencing interpersonal and intimate partner violence, do not have what others take for granted, the ability to social distance in any fashion, or certainly not in a safe fashion. We must take care of each other and do all that we can to protect all the members of our community. We must be vigilant and make sure human rights are not put at risk because we are in a crisis. We need policies and practices that protect everyone while we are trying to flatten the curve. We need solidarity in these efforts, and we have to do this every day. Many of our community, as we said, were devastated by the tornadoes, and they are further devastated by the COVID-19 virus. Many are facing not having access to healthcare, to food, to housing, things that many of us take for granted. We cannot have an overlayer of racism and disenfranchisement when we are trying to move beyond this crisis. We need to make sure that everyone has access to the ballot box and are counted in our census. We have to protect everyone from the harms of economic and racial injustice. Now, it is my honor to turn over the program to a true hero of racial and social justice, someone that has been on the front lines for a very long time to make sure our communities are doing all that they can to ensure equal justice and civil rights to all. This is Beverly Watts, Executive Director of the Tennessee Human Rights Commission.
Thank you, Sharon. It's always a pleasure to be at the stand, even a virtual one. At the Tennessee Human Rights Commission, our mission is a simple one. It's safeguarding individuals from discrimination through education and enforcement. You can find out more about the commission at www.tn.gov/human-rights. Crisis or not, we've been around since 1963, working on issues to eliminate discrimination and hopefully have a community where justice reigns rather than racism. It is amazing to me, though, that time sometimes seems as though it's standing still. We're only 98 days from January 1, 2020. None of us could imagine that in that time period, here in Nashville, we would experience a devastating tornado and the world would be in a coronavirus pandemic. The stand against racism today and our actions moving forward are more critical than ever. I'm reminded in a painful way that the fight for justice and freedom continues from Dr. King's civil rights movement of the 50s and the 60s. From Montgomery to Memphis, it was 13 years. Can you imagine 13 years and what he accomplished in those years? We find ourselves 52 years from Dr. King's death and his legacy of laws designed to eliminate discrimination and lay the foundation for his dream of a beloved community. Dr. King's last book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, is a painful recognition that in many regards, the civil rights struggle has had ebbs and flows, and the fight against racism is still necessary to achieve his beloved community. I am, in fact, a historian, and my role at the Tennessee Human Rights Commission says that as an independent agency, which we need to continue to be, is necessary, and it requires me to share my reflections as it relates to my history in the civil rights era. No, I didn't march with Dr. King, but since the early 70s, I've been working on the issues and the laws that he put into place to safeguard all of us from discrimination and injustice. I agree with Mrs. King, who in the foreword to his book said, the glowing spirit and sharp insight of Martin Luther King Jr. are embodied in the book. The solutions he offered can still save our society. I still hope that it will be seen as a testament that will be transmuted to a universal determination to realize the economic and social justice for which he gave his life. I believe that Dr. King's last book really lays the foundation and lays out strategies that we can use today. The Poor People's Campaign was his last program, which he never saw come to fruition. The Poor People's Campaign noted that injustice, poverty, racism, and its combinations was creating an unjust society. Dr. King believed that in his, as prescriptive and as, I think, he was also prophetic. The appendix of the book identified inequalities that requires more definitive actions to reach equity and equality. Now, this was 1967. Inadequate educational system and widening gaps in educational achievements was things he talked about then. He noted that the American educational system did not know how or what to teach. We are still saying those things today. He talked about access to employment free from discrimination. That's what I've been doing for more than 40 years. It is an uphill battle, and it continues to be such. He identified and defined roles for those in universities in human services agencies, in human rights agencies, and in human resource positions to eliminate pay gaps and add systems to better police fair employment practices agencies, as well as fund them. Most of the time, these agencies are underfunded and understaffed. Access to fair and affordable housing for all, and rights and access for all. These were Dr. King's assessments, not mine, not of today. I believe the identification of these issues in 1967 and the actions necessary to move forward are clear and still relevant today. We are still faced with education disparities and less resources. The pandemic shows us that students in Nashville and across this country are in low-income schools, don't have access to the books that they need. The experience of the teachers are much lower. Internet and technology difficulties limit their capacity and ability to learn from home. And there's limited diverse curriculum. High poverty rates, lowered living conditions, and lack of public transit and lack of sanitary conditions in certain neighborhoods continues to hold not only them back, but our communities back from their full potential. Housing discrimination, the last of Dr. King's legacies, is still unfulfilled. Barriers to employment. Implicit bias by any other name is racism and all other isms. Lack of access to healthcare in this pandemic lets us know that there's a disproportionate rate of African Americans and other people of color dying at a greater rate than we exist in the public. I don't understand, but the whole notion of mass incarceration and who is in the school to prison pipeline goes back to my first statement about inadequate education. Most of the time I learned as a child that idle minds make for mischief. The pandemic continues to highlight all of the above. I have spent my free time when I'm not anxious or trying to work from alternate workspaces, watching a few movies just to feel as though I have a break from this office known as my house. But I watched two movies which bring into light, I think, some of the things in the current situation. One of them was The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. Tells the story of Henrietta Lacks, whose cancer cells are the source of the HeLa cells. She was an African-American woman. It was the first immortalized human cell lines, and it is one of the most important in medical research even today. It also highlighted the notion that people of color have been dismissed with respect to what they have brought to this community of healthcare. Dr. Charles Drew, who founded blood transfusions, and then the study at Tuskegee on Black men called the Syphilis Experiment Research. All of these highlight the good and the bad. The other was Just Mercy, the true story of Brian Stevenson's life as an attorney and his quest to free unjustly incarcerated Black men. He's located in, of all places, Montgomery, Alabama. So I'm back to Montgomery again. In the COVID-19 era that we see today, I believe it is the Montgomery of the day. It is killing African Americans at a disproportionate rate. And some are blaming the very people that are victims for not having adequate health care. And the fact that many were frontline workers who could not work from home is an injustice in and of itself. It was also during this time that stories of inadequate access by students to technology to continue learning is another issue. But it is the additional burden on parents who have not been looking at or trained to teach their children. And we told them, oh, go home and teach them something. We see that there are more resources coming online and coming through our TVs. But is this enough? Is this enough for students who are already undereducated? Racism and its ugly realities continue to persist despite where we are today, and despite efforts to eliminate it. Then there's the food insecure neighborhoods, and the fact that we're now serving school lunches on a drive-by, drive-in basis for many students because they're food insecure. What can we do to make a difference while practicing social distance? We can take the pledge today and take it very seriously. We can identify actions. Some can be simple, some may be complex and complicated, but we can find others to stand firm in our resolve. we can move forward. Understand that in moving forward, we're also going to have to accept disappointment. Everything that we do may not come to a closure today or in the very near future. After all, we're 400 years from the first ships that landed on these shores that brought Native Africans to this country. We also need to cling to hope. We need to look for ways that we can celebrate each other. And we also look for ways that we can identify systemic, social, political, and economic issues that can be changed through policies. But the policies must be consistent. We need to help others understand what racism looks like, sounds like, and feels. It's sometimes just not the notion of calling somebody out of their name. It is the policy that offers neglect to the many neighborhoods in which those of color live. It is the gentrification in the city of Nashville that is taking away the very neighborhoods that we came to love and that covered us in nurturing, loving kind of experiences. We are, in fact, looking at a place that no longer looks the same as when I was a child growing up, walking up and down Fifth Avenue to the Kane Sloans, the Hardys, or even going through the arcade. And by the way, there were signs that said colored and white. Those did not stop us from having fun. We need to work with those developing data around this so that we can tell people and show people how racism impacts not only those in vulnerable communities, but we need to look at how we can have a mission that involves eliminating racism, promoting equity and diversity, and bringing the beloved community of Dr. King's dream into focus and reality, not just for those fighting against it, for those fighting for it as well. Don't forget that all of us can complete one thing that I think is one of the things that we need to do. April is Census Month. If we don't fill out the census form, we've missed an opportunity to encourage and our public officials to get money. But once they get the money, we got to work on it, because every once in a while, money comes in, but neglect has been a tool to perpetuate racism. Join with others as we are doing virtually today, or when we can stop social distancing, or we can yell across those 6 feet to identify and build affordable housing in Nashville. Workers are now having to commute longer with a failed transit system. We need to work to enhance education in all of our schools, in all of our communities. We need to work with preparing to provide information on income and health accessibility. I was born at Hubbard Hospital. Until General Hospital came back, about 15 years ago, there was no hospital in North Nashville. And it's still not a full service hospital. Hubbard was. And we need to recognize and understand that we've lost institutions and other things because of neglect. And sometimes I think because of our own inability to understand that we can build institutions who have historically been institutions of color into those that serve the greater community. None of us can pretend that we know all the answers, that it is difficult for marginalized and vulnerable people to arrive at awareness of their latent strengths. They have been schooled to believe in their incapacity. The stings and indignities of yesterday and yesterday brings us through history as fighters for freedom and justice and the elimination of racism. One of the things I'd like to just close with is the notion of Benjamin Franklin. He said, "Justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are." And finally, Eleanor Roosevelt, who I loved, when she got in a plane with the Tuskegee Airmen, when people told her that was unsafe, to highlight the fact that these were highly trained pilots who could fly planes. Now recognize that none of them were lost, and that the bomber fighters asked them to be their escorts whenever they went out. So there's something to be said for celebrating our history in a different way. Eleanor Roosevelt said, "The world of the future is in making tomorrow now." Where, after all, the universal human rights began, in small places in our communities, so small they can't be seen on the world map. But if we're working in small places, if we're working in our communities, we can make a difference. And we can make a difference in Nashville, in Tennessee, in the nation, and the world. Thank you for allowing me to be here to share a few words with you today. And let me just encourage you to keep up the fight. Without the fight, we will lose the battle. Let me now take a moment to introduce my good friend, Nashville freedom fighter and musician, Rip Patton.
Hello, Dr. Patton. Are you on the line? You can speak through your phone. We'll get him back in just a minute. This will be a true treat. Give us just a second. Dr. Patton, if you speak through your phone, we will have you. I think we've lost your video, but that's fine. You could just talk through your telephone, and I have you on the line. Hello? Hello? Okay. We may have to go back to Dr. Patton. A little bit about his history. He is a freedom rider and has a long, long history with the civil rights movement. And it's very important, as Beverly stated, that we remember our history and we understand those that have come before us. Yes, Dr. Patton, I'll turn it over to you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you and good morning. Let me say about Nashville as being taking part in the Freedom Rides that Nashville, the Nashville Student Movement, SNCC, we would announce ourselves through music. We had people who would speak for us and we would listen, even in demonstrations. And one example was April 19th when Alexander Luby's home was bombed. We had what we call a silent march that started at Tennessee A&I, which is now Tennessee State, all the way down Jefferson Street where Fisk University, Pearl High, and Washington Junior High joined in that march. It was a silent march. We marched 3 abreast, 3.5 miles. The students at Vanderbilt, Scarrett, and Peabody came down Broad Street. And our speakers were none other than Diane Nash and the Reverend C.T. Vivian. So this was a silent march. And that's the way we would do things then in the 60s. Of course, it's a lot different now. You hear a lot of people with bullhorns who are screaming into bullhorns, which is nothing but a microphone that you can talk naturally, just as I am doing now. Later on, a year later in 61 was the Freedom Rides, which I was a part of the Freedom Rides. I knew about the burning of the bus in Anderson. I knew about the beatings in Birmingham, and I knew about the beatings of our Nashville students in Montgomery. Doing all 3 of these, I was still in Nashville, but I had volunteered to go on the Freedom Rides, and I was in the 3rd group to leave Nashville, going to Montgomery to relieve those who had been hospitalized in Montgomery. There was no such thing as Highway 65. We had to go down Highway 31. There were no interstates, I might say, just like 65 to get you to Montgomery. So we had to go down Highway 31, which is, if you don't know 31, it's 8th Avenue or Franklin Road, takes you right through Pulaski and other towns going south. After on the 23rd, we arrived on the 23rd of May, and on the 24th, I was on a Greyhound bus on my way to Jackson, Mississippi, the worst state of all. Didn't know what was going to happen to us. We were arrested and we stayed in jail for probably 4 or 5 days, and then we filled the jails, the city jails, the county jails, and the 27 of us that were in the first group went to Raymond, Mississippi, which is where the county farm was. So I think the governor of the state and the attorney that we need to keep all these people in one place because Mississippi didn't expect as many freedom riders to come as they did. And so they moved us to Parchment Penitentiary. And one of the things that we would do would sing every morning. We never did have a chance to get out of our cells other than to take the shower. And so we would wake up every morning with a song to keep us grounded and to let us know that we were there for a purpose and we were there for the long haul. And the song simply says, I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom, because we knew that one day that we would be able to get on a bus, sit anywhere we wanted to sit, and when that bus would come to a station, we could get off and go in the front door and sit down and eat or drink and use the restrooms without seeing those signs. And so when we wake up in the morning, we start a song. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Ain't no harm to keep your mind stayed on freedom. Ain't no harm to keep your mind stayed on freedom. Ain't no harm to keep your mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Walking and talking with my mind stayed on freedom. Walking and talking. Hallelujah. And so that was one of the songs that we would sing in the morning. Of course, we had other songs that we would sing to fit the situation. And if you don't mind, I'll just give you one more. For example, we would sing and the guards at the prison would say, if you don't stop that singing, we're going to take your mattress away from you. And we would continue to sing. And then they would open the gates and that we would put our mattresses out in the hallway to simply let them know, ain't gonna let no mattress turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let no mattress turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. So we had songs to fit our various situations not only while we were in prison, but when we were doing demonstrations and call for a song. And I say thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patton. I wish that we could sit here and hear you tell your stories and listen to you sing all day, because it truly makes me personally appreciate all the sacrifices that all those that have come before us have made. And it's very important for us to understand this history. It's very important for us to understand this history. We thank you so much. You are a true icon of our community. And every day, if we don't look up to those who have been before us, look up to those who have treaded those difficult waters and helped us move forward, I cannot say enough about the appreciation I feel for all you have done and all you continue to do to make sure that we do not lose the understanding of the injustices that can move forward unless we remain vigilant. So thank you so much, Dr. Patton.
Thank you.
Now I would like to introduce the liaison to the New Americas Office, planner in the Neighborhood Development and Infrastructure Department of the Mayor's Office.
Thank you very much. If you all please join me for a moment of silence for the victims of racial injustice and also for the many that are suffering under COVID-19. Thank you. I'm very proud to represent Mayor John Cooper. He sends his greetings at this virtual stand against racism. It is an event I enjoy attending every year. Normally, we will just be gathered on the steps of the historic Metro Courthouse in a sunny day. Today, we have to do it indoors, but what matters is that we are here together, and I'm sure we'll be there next year in person. There is so much happening in our community right now that we could easily get distracted. But now, more than ever, we must be focused. Our city is working through two immense challenges: the recovering from the Super Tuesday tornadoes and stopping the spread of COVID-19. As we work through these challenges, we must stay focused on our neighbors and our neighborhoods. We must call out where there is injustice and be focused on any type of behavior or actions that seek to isolate, intimidate, or marginalize people for any reason, especially their race, color, or nation of origin. To make a difference, we all have to be invested and committed to being the catalysts in our own communities for acceptance and change. We must be focused on being counted. Taking part on the 2020 census is critical to this effort. I am pleased that the census deadlines have been extended, but the time to fill out the form is now, and it's very easy. I'm telling you, I did the first day. You do it in a minute. An accurate census means that Nashville will receive its fair share of federal funding. It will help with planning for new roads, schools, and other public investments. As a planner for this administration, this is critical. But this investment must be made fairly. They should not and will not be focused on one or two areas of the city. As the Mayor Cooper said in his recent State of Metro address, Nashville has more children than just one child, which is downtown, he said. We have lots of children. We need to raise them all and invest in them all. That is one of the keys to eliminate racism. We are a diverse city, and that diversity is part of our identity and our success. Information is available about the virus at covid19.nashville.gov. Please practice social distancing, and don't forget to get free testing that is easily done Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 3 facilities the city has set up. I encourage everyone to take part of the census and all of you to take the pledge against racism. And now we are going to hear a song from Yvonne, Kendall, and Patrick Daisy. Thanks.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. Oh, deep in my heart, We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid to dream. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we are not afraid to
And now we'll hear from Barbara Gunn Lartey, Director of Community Engagement at Metro Human Relations Commission. Barbara.
How in the world is it just for me to follow that incredible rendition of one of the historic civil rights anthems? Nevertheless, greetings. And before I share my remarks, I just want to express my gratitude of being part of this incredible panel of historians, musicologists, civil rights icon, visionaries, luminaries. Very, very honored. And Beverly, I just want to say to you that both of my parents are Tuskegee alums, so your remarks truly affected me. For the next several moments, I'm going to share with you three concepts. One is about developing and using an equity lens. Two, the urgency of using such a lens. And three, for us to all come and activate our power so that we can influence inequity in Nashville. Metro Human Relations Commission recently released a policy recommendation regarding equity, or should I say inequity in Metro. We discussed the benefit of Metro government to commit to being solid and focused on a set of principles that promote equity and a culture of equity in Metro government and in Nashville-Davidson County. We feel so passionately about this that we encouraged Metro to adopt an equity lens as a core metric in performance measurements across Metro departments. In fact, we sent this recommendation directly to the mayor. And I'm pleased on behalf of Metro that their transportation initiative has taken note of our recommendation and is going to work with us in this regard. Metro was informed in part by the 2019 Community Needs Assessment. The Community Needs Assessment is a comprehensive study conducted by Metro Social Services. One of the most striking revelations of this needs assessment is the prevalence of racial and ethnic disparities in three primary areas of living in Nashville: economic and social well-being, wealth, and health outcomes. Metro Social Services confirmed, and Metro Human Relations agreed, that these disparities persist for several reasons, specifically systemic and institutional racial segregation in housing, education, and law enforcement. Tragically, the reality of these inequities currently grips our Nashville communities as we, as others have referenced, navigate the devastating effects of the recent tornado and this pandemic of COVID-19. Metro government's budget shortfall compounds these challenges. Let me pause and say this. As far as inequities, would you believe that in cities across this country, testing has been offered clandestinely to some communities and not others? 2020. Metro Human Relations Commission strongly believes that using an equity lens could be one of the most effective options to address the proven inequities that persist in Nashville. But all of this discussion about equity lens, what is that? What is an equity lens? An equity lens is a tool that helps ensure equitable decision-making and resource allocation as we create a path towards more effective programming and, quite frankly, just more enhanced well-being. Applying such a lens in an intentional and thoughtful manner requires prioritization, specifically in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. For this tool, this equity lens, to be effective, leadership must consider, in fact, must commit to variables including time, budget allocation, and additional resources to create sustainable change. Now, let me be fair, the Metro Human Relations Commission did not create the concept of this equity lens. Several municipalities and countries across the country have been using it. One comes to mind, Multnomah County, the state of Washington. And essentially, it is a rubric of principles and questions for departments and programs and initiatives to ask, are we moving towards being a more equitable entity? And Metro Human Relations Commission believes that this is one of the most effective tools to achieve this. But how? How do we apply an equity lens? How do we operationalize an equity lens to influence systems? To paraphrase civil rights legend Rip Patton, we must keep our eyes stayed on freedom. And in the spirit of that concept, MHRC, Metro Human Relations Commission, invites each of us now, today, to come and activate our power and impact systems of inequity. Now, let me just pause and say this. Systems of equity, structural, institutional inequity, are comprised of people. They're not entities that exist in a vacuum. And so we invite people to come and impact their power. Come. The C in come is consensus. As others have mentioned, we invite you to complete the 2020 census. People, this is not a joke. The census is so important because it is used as a benchmark for federal allocations of money to our communities. We encourage you to even go to the extent of setting a date of accountability, a deadline of sorts, because many of you who are here in Nashville and around the country probably, as Fabian did, complete the census on day one. And then there are those of us who have the best of intentions, and let's just say that we have the best of intentions. Let's set a date of accountability and let's complete the census. And let's incorporate completing the census in our personal and professional conversations. Did you complete the census, the 2020 census yet? I mean, that literally is the question. Just go to 2020census.gov, the O in come. organizations. This is a tried and true method, but the truth of the matter is organizing is an incredibly effective strategy. We encourage you to reach out to organizations. For example, in Nashville, there's Stand Up Nashville, A Voice, Equity Alliance, Faith Communities, the International Ministers Fellowship, Interdenominational Ministers Fellowship, IMF, the Legal Aid Society, NOAA, so many others, Turk, the YWCA. And for those of you who are watching around the country, there are community organizations in your community as well that we encourage you to reach out to. Why? Because social justice is a dynamic aspect of their mission, of their DNA. So email them, call them, text them if that's an opportunity, and simply ask, how can I help? Do you need me to make calls for you? Do you need me to drop off donations? Do you need me to make a donation? It's easier now than ever. Help me out, y'all. Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, Zelle. There's so many ways to make a donation to an organization. $5, $10, doesn't matter. The point is, connect with our organizations so that they can leverage the power that they have. Income. Of course, as I said again, we do not have to recreate the wheel. Connect with your Metro Council members and with the mayor's office. Again, do this by email, do this by text, and let me offer this. Oftentimes we will sit down at our computers or on our phones. Dear Metro Council member, dear mayor's office, my name is Barbara Gunn Lartey. I live in this community. I believe in equity in Metro and having an equity lens, applying an equity lens. Thank you sincerely, and send. Do this more than once. Do this more than twice. Do this consistently. Let Metro Council and let the mayor's office hear our collective voices. Finally, the income. Now, I tried my best not to use a 10-cent word, but I have my acronym, COM, so I had to come up with something. That's why we're using E. Come. Enfranchisement. Vote. Register to vote. Encourage others to vote. Elections have consequences. I'm not sure how clear we are about that now, but I sincerely think very. So let me recap. We believe in 1, developing and applying an equity lens. 2, doing this with a sense of urgency. And then finally, for us to come together, complete the census, connect with organizations, reaching out to Metro Council and your mayor's office, and activating our right of enfranchisement to vote, to have an impact on and power on systems of equity. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional when I think about where we are in our season in this journey. Thank you for receiving this message. And the next voice you will hear is the visionary of revising this year's Stand Against Racism, Justice in a Time of Crisis, Dr. Sharon Roberson, the CEO of YWCA.
Thank you so much for that inspirational and very informative statement, Barbara. We really appreciate this. The YWCA's mission is eliminating racism, empowering women, promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. All of our mission is more important than ever today. Now we move into the final portion of our program. I want each of you to take a pledge with me, and this is a YWCA pledge against racism. When we take this pledge, I not only want you to take this pledge from your head, but I want you to take this pledge from your heart, I want each of you to stand united to educate, advocate, and promote racial justice. Before we do the pledge, I also want to thank all of the elected officials that are participating in this virtual stand. We truly are grateful to you, and we know we have to rely on you to move forward to further this mission. Now, our pledge against racism. As an individual committed to social justice, I stand with YWCA against racism and discrimination of any kind. I will commit to a lifetime of promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all people in my community and in the world. I truly believe that if all of us commit with our heart to this pledge against racism, that our country and our community will not only survive, but we will thrive. I thank all of you for participating today. Again, I thank all of our partners in this mission, the Metro Human Relations Commission and the Tennessee Human Rights Commission. We'll all continue to stand against racism together. Thank you.